Kia ora, my name is Simona Turin. I'm director at Fidelity Life, Hector and Loaded Reports, and I'm also a CEO at AcademyEX. Kia ora.
So we'll talk about the balance between risk and strategy in the boardroom.
Yes, and BAU topics versus strategy, I think. Yes.
Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. My name is Mark Banicevich, and as you just heard, I'm really lucky to spend more time with Simona Turin. Simona, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We want to talk about the balance between business as usual activity in the boardroom or overseeing business as usual, overseeing risk, and spending time future thinking on strategy. Can we start then with let's explain then what is risk and what is strategy and what is BAU. Let's define the terms we're starting with.
So I think as part of governance, of course, one of the key roles of a board is how to manage risk. That's for sure. But is also working with executive team to drive longer term strategy for the company. Mm-hmm. And of course, also understand the business as usual items like finance and people management and sales operations, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Where do you think boards commonly focus their time, and what do you think is the right balance between spending time on those three areas?
Traditionally, and I have seen some reports and insights that especially in New Zealand, there is a little bit of tendency for the boards to focus too much on risk and BAU and not enough challenging the strategy and the ambition to drive business forward. Now, I could also right away say that will be another, to be devil's advocate, to say there's another viewpoint, of course, that if you focus too much on strategy and not enough on execution and understanding the capabilities of a business, you will have this beautiful strategy that no execution and not ability to do that. So really the board needs to help executives and the business to drive, not just drive the strategy, but really connect what does it take for it to be successful.
Right, okay. And you mentioned before risk and directors that often spend possibly a little too much time on risk and not enough time forward thinking and focusing on the execution of that. What do you think drives that behaviour?
Often compliance and different governing bodies, the kind of required risk, but also, of course, director liability. I think also often maybe the director board composition is out of balance. If you have many, sorry to say, but directors that have experience or their background in accounting.
So you're going to say lawyers and accountants.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'll be that cliche, but then automatically that just kind of, and we provide a really good perspective, but I think we need to have diversity of thought and that balance of, people like myself may be challenging on why we haven't implemented AI yet. And where the business is going forward. Right.
So yes, as you say, there is significant liability as a director, and the downside risk is possibly much greater for the directors themselves than the upside. So there could potentially be a tendency to focus on, let's make sure this company is safe and secure, rather than thinking, where could this be? The real blue sky thinking. And it's quite understandable. And so, as you suggest, a way to manage that risk is by having diversity in the boardroom to balance your lawyers and accountants, for example, with people who maybe have entrepreneurial experience or technology experience in those sorts of areas that can be a bit more forward thinking.
And I would add, in addition, I think having board members that have international experience, even for New Zealand companies, because kind of that ambition that sometimes could be sometimes lacking in New Zealand companies, you kind of provide a little bit of that bigness or, a little bit larger ambition Yes.
Larger, you mean more than the boat, the batch and the BMW, the traditional
Yes.
thinking of a New Zealand entrepreneur, yes. Whereas, just because you come from the US, of course, and so many people dream of starting a $1 billion company, right? Whereas here, we're just, if it's big enough that I can buy the batch, the boat, the BMW, then I'll retire and that's all I want, right?
Exactly, and that ambition, I think most New Zealand companies at some point will need to expand overseas. It's just the size of the market.
Yes.
How do you do it? How do you think about it? It's challenging, but I think that's how you need to think. Most companies are global nowadays. So I think having that perspective and even a discussion at the board is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So what portion of time, if you can take, we know that of course that there will be board meetings that are focused on strategy, or you'll have your strategy session maybe once a year. You'll have your audit and risk committee that is focused on risk. But let's take a standard board meeting. What portion of time do you think should be spent discussing strategy and the execution of that strategy versus the other business as usual activities, risk management, finances and those sorts of things?
Sometimes it's really depending on company. Fidelity versus most of the startup that I am on will have very different, of course, time allocation. But what I like often is to have rotating deep dives. So rather than we need to cover every board meeting, we need to cover all topics, anything from finance, budget, to sales, to customer or product, having deep dives where really board members understand, let's say, a product which we're releasing or a customer perspective, an ability to kind of educate, but also maybe seeing how does it tie to overall strategy, what have we learned, what do we need maybe to pivot a bit. So I really like the approach where at that point business as usual is more about questions and raising what do we need, what decisions we need to make, or what is not going well, and kind of focusing on these, and then having deep dives on a specific topic.
Right, okay. Now, the Institute of Directors, of course, the first pillar of good governance is around setting the strategy. You talked about execution. What role does the board play in the implementation of strategy and the execution of strategy?
Guiding and helping executive team to keep on track, accountable, but also supporting. So, if things are not going as well, what needs to be true in order for us to execute on strategy? Or is there a question, and I like when, maybe things not going as we planned, is having that discussion. Is this strategy still true? Should we be still going in that direction? Or, having a really brave conversation and say, well, we need to rethink this. Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you. Well, one final question for you, and a little bit more towards the director role generally. Given your experience as a director, what's the best advice you would give to somebody who's starting out?
Focusing on your value as a director, what can you bring to the table? I think, I often, before I even consider any board role, I often ask, what does success look like for that company? If I was part of a board, what does success look like? And I think keeping my own integrity and my own values, really questioning myself, am I the right person? So that's probably the first one. The second one is being curious and really focusing on how to ask questions. The art of questions is really key as a board, as a director, and I think that's the second one. And the third one, creating relationships with other board members, because I do believe as a board we are a team, and how we collaborate and having these relationships is a key.
Right, it is essential that the board always express a united front outside of the boardroom, isn't it? Otherwise you'll get some rather adverse effects to the company.
Exactly, and we talked about strategies, aligning everyone to that strategy is kind of disagree and commit, but commit. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Simona, thank you very much again for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been lovely to talk with you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you next episode. Thank you for watching this episode of Governance Bites. We have more episodes on YouTube and your favourite podcast channel, where I interview directors and experts on various topics relating to boards of directors and governance. We'd love to see you back, and please like, subscribe, and share the videos and podcasts.